Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What's going on, guys? It is TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL edition, and this is the AFC South division preview. With me, as always, is the fine citizen, Mr. Jacob Workman. Jake, what's going on, man?
It's going good. We're getting through these previews, wrapping up the AFC South today. Interesting conference or division. I think it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it was a tight one last year, and I'm assuming this is probably going to be pretty similar this year with a couple of these teams anyway. So let's dive right in. Taking a look first at the Tennessee Titans, it was a tough year for the Titans in 23, despite playing in one of the worst conferences in the league. It was tight, but the performance was kind of lackluster there. Consistency was definitely a struggle throughout the year, as the team did not get back to back wins at any point in the regular season. The Titans started the season 2-4 with Ryan Tannehill at the helm. During their Week 6 loss against the Ravens, Tannehill suffered a high ankle sprain that launched Will Levis into the starting position after their Week 7 bye. Levis went on to win his first game in a 5-point win over the Falcons in Week 8, but would go on to lose 5 of his next 7 games. Despite those losses, the Titans made the decision to stick with Levis even after Tannehill was healthy. That changed during Week 15, though, in a division battle against the Houston Texans when Levis suffered a leg injury that would knock him out for a couple of weeks and handed the starting role back to Ryan Tannehill. The Titans went on to lose that game and were mathematically eliminated from playoff contention for their second straight year. Levis would return briefly in Week 17 again against the Texans, but wasn't on the field for long before suffering a foot injury that would end up knocking him out for the rest of the season. Well, the Titans did finish their season with a division win against the Jaguars on the back of a 153-yard performance from Derrick Henry. It was a hollow win as the team finished 6-11, their worst season since 2015. Tennessee struggled on both sides of the ball, finishing 19th on offense and 29th on defense. Which is not what you'd expect from a Mike Vrabel defense. Struggles on both sides of the ball throughout the year triggered the Titans' ownership to clean house. As 2 days after their Week 18 loss, Tennessee let go of head coach Mike Vrabel, who had lost 18 out of his last 24 games dating back to 2022 and had not won a playoff game since 2019. Offensive coordinator Todd Downing, no relation. Offensive line coach Keith Carter, secondary coach Anthony Midget, and offensive skill assistant coach Eric Frazier were also let go. What were your thoughts on the performance of the 23 Tennessee Titans?
Well, my first thought is we're about to be canceled. I've heard us drop a Redskins and a midget now in our last 2 episodes, so we're gonna have some issues here. 6-11 fired Vrabel. Levis. I do think Levis showed some promise, and obviously bringing in DeAndre Hopkins was huge. Like I think that's great, and I think they're. Obviously, I am a Vrabel fan, so I don't really like getting rid of him. But I can kind of see where they're going here. I actually think that they're kind of on an upward trend here.
All right. Well, let's talk about the offseason moves here. So starting with the coaching staff, the Titans didn't waste much time at all naming their successor to Mike Vrabel, hiring Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan as their new head coach. Titans went with former All-ACC and NFL safety Denard Wilson for the DC role after stints with the Rams, Jets, Eagles, and most recently Baltimore Ravens. Nick Foles was hired as the Titans' new offensive coordinator, who was most recently the passing game coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars and had previous stints with UNLV, the Oakland Raiders, and the Stanford Cardinal, where he was the assistant QB coach for Andrew Luck. In addition to the coaching staff, we saw some movement on player personnel as well. Starting with departures, Tennessee has moved on from multiple familiar faces. Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, Azeez Al-Shahir, Andre Dillard, Terrell Edmonds, Christian Fulton, and Danico Autry have all found new homes. The team did bring in some solid additions to try to surround Will Levis with some more weapons, including wide receiver Calvin Ridley, wide receiver Tyler Boyd, and running back Tony Pollard to add the existing weapons in DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks. The team also added Lloyd Cushenberry to be the team's starting center, and cornerback Mason Rudolph is coming in to back up Will Levis. Multiple defensive additions also came in, starting with cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, who the Titans traded a 24 7th and a 25 third with the Chiefs in exchange for Sneed and a 2024 7th round pick. Sebastian Joseph Day, Kenneth Murray Jr., Chidobe Awuzie, and safety Jamal Adams were also brought in to bolster the defensive unit. Tennessee also made some day one impact draft picks with the 7th pick in the draft. They selected offensive tackle J.C. Latham from Alabama, solidifying a massive need and void left by Dillard, who left for Green Bay. The team also drafted Tavondre Sweat, defensive tackle from Texas, in the second round, who looks to step in and play starting nose tackle in the team's 3-4 scheme. What's the biggest impact move you've seen here, looking at all of the Titans action this offseason, and how do you think this offense is going to look with some of these new weapons?
I absolutely love the offense. Callahan bringing Boyd with him, Levis, that's the question, I feel. But Levis with Ridley, Nuke, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, drafted Latham at offensive tackle. Like, the pieces are there. I feel like this could be a very good offense. Defensively, I've got a little bit of questions. Obviously, I love L'Jarius Sneed, bringing him in. The linebackers are where I have a little bit of an issue. That's probably the biggest question mark on this whole team, to be honest. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with this offense, or this roster
In totality. Yeah. So we talked about Will Levis is still there. He's now definitely QB1. There's no question about that. Tony Pollard coming in to replace Derrick Henry is definitely a difference maker in terms of, I think, what Brian Callahan's going to do. I definitely think Tony Pollard fits more of the Joe Mixon role than what Derrick Henry would have. So pretty solid pickup for him there. Great wide receiving room. It's one of the best in the AFC South at a minimum, if not one of the better wide receiver rooms in the league, with Ridley, Nuke, and Tyler Boyd as their starting three. We talked about J.C. Latham coming in to step in and fill that left tackle void. On the defensive front, Sebastian Joseph Day is new to the team. Tavondre Sweat's a rookie. They've got Jeffrey Simmons on the other side of the equation. Definitely some question marks on the the linebacker role, but their secondary doesn't look bad. Taking a look at the depth chart, you talked about the offense a little bit. What are some of your question marks here on the defensive side?
Just the linebackers, really. Like, I like the rest of it. The linebackers are my biggest question.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at the Titans' schedule. They've got some tough games on the docket for sure. Starting the season off against Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, and that is on the road. Then they come back home, and their first home game is against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Then they're hosting the Green Bay Packers, and then they travel back to the road to visit the Miami Dolphins. Their bye week is week 5, so super early into the season. So hopefully they're going to be able to stay healthy and ride out this long stretch of games. They've got some tough road games, though. Sunday, October 20th, they go to Buffalo. The following week, they're traveling to play the Lions in Detroit. 2 weeks later, they are going to LA to play the Chargers. 2 weeks after that, they're hitting the road again to go play the Houston Texans. They play the Washington Commanders the following week. They've got Cincinnati and Jacksonville that are both coming to Tennessee to play. And then again, they've got road games again, playing the Colts in Jacksonville. And then they finish their season playing the Houston Texans at home. Looking at division odds, they're at plus 950. Over under right now, 6.5. Where do you have these guys landing at the end of the year?
So this is going to be a kind of a common trend as we go through predictions for each team in this division, but this schedule is hell. Like, I actually think this team is good. Like, honestly, I think this team is good. I have them winning 2 games. Like, this schedule is so tough. And it's going to be pretty similar as we go through every other team in the division. I just don't see, like, obviously they're going to win games they shouldn't. So it'll probably be closer to like 5 or 6 wins, which is still under 6.5. But I could only get them to 2 wins.
I've got one more win. I've got them at 3, but not much different there. I definitely think there's probably some games here that we're looking at that are going to flip the other way. Very possibly could land at 6, but this is a brutal schedule. And as you just talked about, this is not the only brutal schedule in the AFC South.
Yeah, this division's going to go through hell this year. This is a brutal schedules.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on to the next team here. We got the Indianapolis Colts. Dawn of a new era for the 23 Colts as they entered the season with their first-time head coach Shane Steichen and rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson under center. The team started the year off with some controversy as their star running back Jonathan Taylor, who was seeking a contract extension ahead of the final season under contract, they couldn't come to terms with the team, and he actually requested permission to seek a trade in July. They gave him that permission, but he couldn't find one. So the Colts ended up placing Taylor on a PUP list instead of outright cutting him ahead of the season. And he missed more than the first 4 games, but that solidified at least those first 4. Colts kicked off the year without him, and it was a year of ups and downs. Anthony Richardson only made it through roughly 5 quarters of football before he got sidelined due to a concussion in their second game against the Texans. Gardner Minshew proved to be a valuable pickup for the Colts, however, as he went on to lead the Colts to victory in both week 2 and week 3 before Richardson returned to action in week 4 against the Rams. Indy lost a nail biter in overtime to the Rams at home, and the following week, disaster struck again, only this time it was a bit of a deeper blow because midway through the second quarter of their game against the Titans, Anthony Richardson suffered an injury to the AC joint in his throwing shoulder, and it would knock him out for the rest of the year, handing the helm back over to Gardner Minshew for the rest of the season. Indy did win that game, but it was up and down the rest of the season. They lost 3 straight after the win over the Titans, turned it around to go on a 4-game win streak, and then traded wins and losses through the rest of the year. During that time frame, they did manage to get Taylor to sign a 3-year extension that keeps him in with the team for the foreseeable future. Despite losing Richardson, the team was in playoff contention going into the final game of the year, but the Texans ruined that with a 4-point win, securing the AFC South crown for the Texans and knocking the Colts out of the playoffs, making it 3 years straight without a playoff berth and their 9th straight year without winning the AFC South. The team did improve drastically over the previous year, improving by 5 wins despite finishing the season 20th on offense and 22nd on defense, according to PFF rankings. What were your thoughts on the 23 season for the Colts?
So I just made a few quick notes, and a lot of them you mentioned already. So AR with the AC joint injury, the Taylor holdout, losing your starting cornerback, Isaiah Rodgers, for the whole year because he got suspended for gambling. Those are the bad things. We did see some promising signs from AR a little bit when he did play, at least, and then Taylor did end up coming back. But I think the one thing you've got to look at is Steichen was still able to put together a pretty good offense with Gardner Minshew. So there are positive things there. Like, I think Steichen's going to be a great coach. I think the offense, if AR can stay healthy, I think it's going to be a pretty good offense this year.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk a little bit about the off-season stuff here. No shakeups on the coaching front for the Colts. We did have some movement as far as player personnel goes. Starting with departures, both Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss found new homes. The team had several key players enter free agency, but they were able to retain several of them. So they re-signed Michael Pittman, Tyquan Lewis, Kenny Moore, Rigoberto Sanchez, Grover Stewart, Danny Pittner, Julian Blackman, DeForest Buckner, and Zaire Franklin. They all entered the offseason as needing to be signed, and they locked all of them up. So great job for the Colts front office getting a lot of those guys back. They also brought in a couple of new faces, most notably defensive tackle Raekwon Davis and quarterback Joe Flacco, who found a bit of a resurgence late in the 23 season with the Browns. The team also addressed some concerns through the draft. In round 1, they drafted Liatu Latu out of UCLA, who looks to eventually play opposite of Kwity Paye. They also drafted 6'4" wide receiver Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, who is currently slotted in the 3 spot behind Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. What's the biggest impact move this offseason for the Colts, and who do you think is going to have a bigger year 1 impact between these two rookies?
Yeah, I like Latu, but I think AD Mitchell is huge. I think he's going to come in and immediately be a threat. Pairing him with Pittman, I think, is going to be very good. Getting Jelani Woods back and his size is going to be huge over the middle. Like, I don't know. I think Mitchell's going to be. I almost want to say he's going to lead receivers in our rookie receivers in yards.
Okay, we're going to get to it in a second. I think there may be a betting pick there for you on that, but we'll get to it here momentarily. Taking a look at the depth chart here, we just talked about AR being back. Jonathan Taylor's going to be in the mix for a while. They've got a solid receiving core. Jelani Woods returning, decent offensive line. Taking a look at this offensive defensive depth chart, do you see any holes here that are concerning?
Really, the only thing I'm not too big on, and it's kind of been a trend, really. So maybe just no one's good, but I'm just not real good big on their secondary.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems to be a trend. There's a lot of question marks in the secondary across the league, really. I don't know what's going on with that, but definitely something to watch out for is their secondary performance. Taking a look at their schedule again, like we just teed this up a little bit, but brutal. They start the season off at home against Houston, but then they travel to go play Green Bay. They have road games against Jacksonville, the Titans, the Texans again. So Sunday, October 27th. Go to Minnesota to play the Vikings. That should be an easy win for them. But they've got Buffalo at home. They have Miami at home. On the road against the Jets, they play the Lions November 24th. Looking at this schedule, their bye week is week 14, so they're going to have to get through a major part of the season before they're going to get a break. Sitting at plus 310 division odds and 8.5 on the win total. Where do you have these guys at the end of the season?
Yeah, so one thing I want to note here is a lot of times in the NFL, when I look at schedules, I look at back-to-back road games. So they go at Jacksonville, at Tennessee. So who do they get when they come home? Miami. Back-to-back road games at Houston, at Minnesota. Who do they get when they come home? Buffalo. On the road again, Jets. Oh, who do they come home to? The Lions. Like, that's not good. And then after the Lions, they're well, there is a bye in the middle, but they're back-to-back on the road again. Like, I mean, those two should be winnable games, but still, like, that's a lot for an NFL team. I have them coming just under the win total. I have them at 8-9, which is under the 8.5 at -118.
Okay, I'm a little bit higher on this team than you are. I tinkered around a lot with this. I actually have them at 11-6, but I have them at
Jeez.
11-6, winning a lot of really close games.
Yeah.
I just I've got confidence that Steichen's going to be able to make this team continue to play above maybe what their talent level is. He did it last year, and if this team can stay healthy, I definitely think they're going to be able to put points on the board. But that's the big question mark, right? Is if they're going to be able to keep all these guys healthy.
AR clearly has to. He can't just be out there running wild. He's going to have to be able to sit and throw, and that's where I think a lot of this issue is going to come in. And obviously, judging by what Vegas put the odds at, they're pretty unsure as to what to expect from the Colts. Also.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Next team, excuse me, we've got here of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This again proved to be a disappointing season for the Jaguars, despite entering the year as the popular favorite to win AFC South. Jags started the season 1-2, winning their week 1 battle against division rival Colts, and then losing their next 2 games at home against Kansas City and Houston. The team quickly righted the ship, however, winning 5 straight and 6 of 7 to improve their record to 8-3 after a 24-21 road win against the Texans in Week 12. Unfortunately for Jags fans, Jacksonville suffered a late season collapse as an injury to Trevor Lawrence during a Week 13 loss to the Bengals lingered for the rest of the year, and a season-ending injury to wide receiver Christian Kirk caused the team to lose 5 of their last 6 and slip from tops of the AFC South to out of the playoffs. Jacksonville finished the season at 9-8, which was good enough to win the division in 22, but not this year with the resurgence of the Texans on the shoulders of rookie phenom CJ Stroud. Jacksonville finished the season 27th in total offense and 18th in total defense, according to PFF. Despite the offense performing rather poorly, the team retained offensive coordinator Press Taylor. The same cannot be said on the defensive side, as the Jags fired the entire defensive staff the day after their Week 18 loss to the Titans, including defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell. What were your thoughts on the 23 season for the Jags?
Yeah, so kind of like what we talked about with Philly when we talked about the Eagles, started 6-2 just to finish 9-8. Like, I know we had the injuries and stuff, but I don't know. I just feel like they weren't playing that tough of competition last year for them to falter like that. Like, I feel like they should have had a more successful finish to the season.
Yeah, so let's talk about the offseason moves here. Starting on the coaching front, we already talked about they moved on from Mike Caldwell. He was replaced with Ryan Nielsen, who makes his way to Jacksonville after serving 1 year as the defensive coordinator for the Falcons. Along with the Nielsen hire, several other defensive coaching staff members were hired to replace voids, including Chris Richard, who was previously coached with Nielsen in New Orleans. Jacksonville saw 2 main departures in the offseason as wide receiver Calvin Ridley and cornerback Trey Herndon both found new homes. Zay Jones was released. They brought in a couple new faces, starting with the trade with the Patriots for Mac Jones. The Jags received Jones in exchange for a 24 6th-round selection. The team also brought in some new faces through free agency, including Darnell Savage, wide receivers Devin Duvernay and Denzel Mims, and Gabe Davis, as well as cornerbacks Ronald Darby and Trey Flowers, Terrell Edmonds, safety and center Mitch Morse. Jacksonville was also busy during the draft. They landed multiple players who looked to step into starting positions, as well as making one trade. Their round 1 selection was originally slotted at 17, but shortly after coming on the clock, it was announced that they made a trade with Minnesota, moving down 6 spots to 23, which ended up being that was the McCarthy selection, right? For Minnesota.
Yeah.
Or was that the selection, or they? Now, anyway, we're not talking about Minnesota. The team still managed to find their starter at 23, and they selected Brian Thomas, a wide receiver out of LSU. The rest of the Jags draft is filled with players looking to provide depth. Last but not least, Jacksonville agreed to a 5-year contract extension with quarterback Trevor Lawrence, locking the Clemson alum in as the Jags starting QB for the next several years. What do you think will be the biggest impact here, looking at the totality of the Jags offseason moves?
So the one thing I noted, I think Brian Thomas was the better LSU wide receiver. We talked about Malik Neighbors in our last episode. I think Brian Thomas is he obviously is a outside threat to go with Kirk and Davis. Like, I really like what they have there. I like Trevor Lawrence with Travis Etienne. Like, I just think that I think they've improved at least. I think they're on the right track. Again, this is going to be another one of those situations where we're going to talk about schedule. And I do got to throw some love to them for bringing some Florida State guys in. They signed Ronald Darby, which he's been a very good corner in the NFL now for 10 years. He was on the national championship team in 2013. And then they did draft Jerrion Jones, which is an up and coming. He's a stud man to man corner too. I mean, I don't think he's going to start right away, but he will get some playing time.
Yeah, so looking at their depth chart here, anything stand out to you here? They've obviously got a pretty solid wide receiver room. Travis Etienne comes back to be starting running back. Evan Ingram is still there at the tight end position. Looking at their defensive side of the ball, they've got Josh Allen, Devin Lloyd, Ronald Darby, who you just talked about, Eric Armstead. Anything here stand out to you as far as strength or weaknesses?
So just to clear up a little thing from earlier, that was the pick that the Vikings took Dallas Turner. They'd already taken the card.
Yeah, I thought it was Dallas Turner, but I wasn't 100% sure.
But no, I really like what they've done in the offseason, honestly. Like I just think they're victim of schedule again, but I do really like what they've done.
Yeah, so let's talk about the schedule because the first two were brutal, but this one I think is worse. They start the season off on the road against Miami. They come home to play the Browns. Then they're on the road for the next 2 weeks at Buffalo and at Houston. They come back home to play the Colts. Then they've got 2 games that are technically slotted as home games, but they're on the road in London to play the Bears and the Patriots. The Patriots tend to play pretty well in London. They finally come back home Sunday, October 27th to play Green Bay. Then they hit the road to go play the Eagles, come back home to play the Vikings, hit the road again to go play the Lions in Detroit. Then when they get their bye week done, they come back home to play the Texans. They go back to play the Titans on the road, division rival team, come back home to play Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Then they hit the road again to go play the Raiders, who play pretty well in Vegas at times, come back home to play division rival Titans, and then they finish the season on the road to play the Colts. Plus 270 division odds. Their over-under on wins is 8.5. Where do you have these guys landing at the end of the year?
So let's talk about that real quick. On the road at Miami, Cleveland, road game, home against Indy, London, and then 4 more games, 2 of them on the road before even a bye week. Like, how do they survive this? Like, that's Jesus, that's crazy. I'm way under again, 6-11. It's under 8.5 at -105. Do I see them probably winning at least 1 or 2 more? Probably, but I think that's still safe for the under. And I think we might be talking about Peterson on the hot seat.
Yeah, I definitely think we're in a position where we're going to be seeing Peterson on the hot seat. I have these guys in the under as well. I have them sitting at 8 and 9, so just under. But I think it could very easily slide the other direction as well. You know, you talked about they may win a couple of these games, but there's probably some losses here that I'm not accounting for. It's going to be a rough year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. If they can get through this schedule and make the playoffs, I mean, at a minimum, they're going to be battle tested because a lot of the games that they have here are potentially going to be playoff teams. So,
well, and for the first 7 weeks of the season, they're barely in Jacksonville. Like I don't know. I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, having 2 games in London. I mean, how do you not count those as road games?
And then you don't even come back to a bye week. You play Green Bay, which is a playoff team, at Philly, which is a playoff team, Minnesota, which is a decent team, and then at the Lions. Like, that's a lot. Like, I don't know.
Tough sledding for the Jags.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to the last team here in the AFC South, which is the Houston Texans. Promising year for the 23 Houston Texans as they entered the year with relatively low expectations, but saw both drastic improvement and confirmation that their recent choices of both the new quarterback and head coach are likely to prove positive for the future of the franchise. It took a couple games for the team to find their footing. They started the year off 0-2 with losses to Baltimore and Indy. Things quickly improved, however. The Houston went 7-3 in their next 10 games, entering week 14 at 7-5. The Texans ran into a strong defensive team in the New York Jets. During that game, C.J. Stroud exited late in the game after suffering concussion. The team went on to lose 2 of the next 3 with Case Keenum and Davis Mills under center. C.J. Stroud returned in week 17, however, and the team went on to win their last 2 games, both of which were division wins that secured the AFC South crown for the Texans for the first time since 2019. Houston finished the regular season tied for 13th in offense and ranked 12th in defense and entered the playoffs red hot. That momentum continued in the wild card round as the Texans blew out the Browns 45-14, overcoming a 14-10 deficit in the second quarter and making C.J. Stroud the youngest quarterback to ever win a playoff game. Competition was stiffer in the divisional round. However, the Texans ran into the Baltimore Ravens, who beat them 34-10. They held Houston's offense scoreless the entire game and did not surrender any points in the second half, ending what was otherwise a terrific year one for both Stroud and new head coach DeMeco Ryans. Jake, what are your thoughts on the 23 Texans season as they exceeded expectations in their first year with both a rookie quarterback and head coach?
Yeah, so early in the year last year, we had both kind of talked about, I think we kind of both saw, we were like, this team's pretty good, but it's going to be a little bit before they actually like start getting it turned around. Well, it wasn't. They turned it around really quick. Great season. Like I think even better than anticipated. Even when we thought they were good. Some pretty good offseason additions for this year, as we'll get into. But yeah, I really like what they did last year.
Yeah, so speaking of offseason, no changes in the coaching staff. It looks like that might have been the case because there were several teams that were looking at Bobby Slowick for head coaching positions, but he ended up staying with Houston. On the personnel front, Houston started the offseason going trade crazy. First trade landed solidified their backfield as the Texans traded a 24 7th round pick to the Bengals for Joe Mixon. On the same day, they shipped out Malik Collins to the Niners in exchange for a 24 7th. 2 days later, Houston traded their 24 first and 7th round picks to Minnesota in exchange for the Vikings 24 second and 6th round picks, as well as a 25 second. And then they kicked April off with a bang as they traded that 25 second round pick for Minnesota to the Bills for Stephon Diggs, a 24 6th round pick, and a 25 5th. Rounding out their trade craze, the Texans then landed Ben Skowronek from the Rams along with their
Skowronek.
Skowronek. Yeah. There we go. From the Rams along with their 26th 7th round pick in exchange for a 26th 6th. Looking at departures, linebackers Blake Cashman and Denzel Perryman, Devin Motor Singletary, George Fant, Josh Jones, Jonathan Greenard, and Sheldon Rankins all found new homes. Rex Burkhead also announced his retirement. They were able to re-sign or add on multiple additions, including linebacker Aziz Al-Shair, a tight end Dalton Schultz re-signed, defensive ends Daniel Hunter, Danico Autry, and Derek Barnett, cornerbacks Jeff Okudah and Miles Bryant, and wide receiver Noah Brown. During the draft, the team did not have a round one selection and instead leveraged rounds 2 through 7 to create some depth. They drafted Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia, offensive tackle Blake Fisher from Notre Dame, safety Kalen Bullock from USC, and tight end Cade Stover from Ohio State, among others. What are your thoughts on the 23 offseason?
So one of the things I do like is that I'm a big fan of Daniel Hunter coming over from the Vikings. Thankfully, we got him out of the division for the Lions' sake, but I think he'll be great as an end for the Texans. The big thing one thing I want to note too is they did sign Cam Akers, which if he can stay healthy, that's a very good backup for Mixon. I think great addition there. But the one thing I want to kind of note here is the Kamari Lassiter pick. I think Jeff Okudah sucks. So to me, he is the weakness of their defense at corner 2. I think day one starter should be Kamari Lassiter in that 2 spot. And I think that's a huge upgrade over Okudah immediately.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Taking a look at the depth chart here, their offense looks fantastic. CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. That wide receiving core is ridiculous. I think Joe Mixon is an upgrade over Devin Singletary. Dalton Schultz, again, like I said, he's re-signed. They've got a pretty solid offensive line set up. Some young guys and some really good guys on the defensive front with Will Anderson, Derek Stingley. You just talked about, Kamari Lassiter. So looking at the offense and defensive depth chart here, anything stand out to you as a concern or otherwise strength?
Not really, other than starting Lassiter over Okudah. I think it's all really good looking. Obviously, I've never been huge on Stephon Diggs. Like he's never been, I don't know. I have different opinion on him than most, but going into a situation with Mixon, Collins, Dell, and Schultz, I think that's going to fit him well, and Stroud will be very happy to have him as an addition.
Yeah, he's got a ton of weapons to go after now. Nico Collins and Tank Dell were both a lot of fun to watch last year. I actually think that Stephon Diggs being in this receiving room, while I hope it doesn't cause problems for the Texans in terms of him bitching because maybe he's not getting enough targets, I do think it takes the pressure off of him. And he's going to be able to play a little bit more wide open because they're not going to be able to just guard Diggs. I think there was a decent step from Diggs down to Davis as the 2 spot when he was playing for the Bills. I don't think there's as much of a gap here between Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell in his own right. So this offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Let's take a look at the 24 schedule here. I think this one's not as bad as some of the other ones, but it's still not easy. They start the season on the road against Indy, come back home to play Caleb Williams and the Bears, hit the road again to play Minnesota, come back home to play Jacksonville, and then Buffalo comes to town. 2 straight road games with New England and Green Bay, and then they come back home to play the Colts again, hit the road again to play the Jets, back home to play the Lions, hit the road to play Dallas, come back home to play the Titans, hit the road again to play Jacksonville, and then they finally hit their Week 14 bye. And then they round out their last 4 games here: home against Miami, on the road against Kansas City, at home against the Ravens, and then on the road against the Titans. Definitely not an easy schedule for the Texans either. Where do you have these guys sitting? Their plus 105 division odds, and their over under right now is 9.5. With it looks like Vegas is pretty confident that they're going to get that over.
Yeah, so looking at just a few of the little schedule spots, back-to-back road, New England, Green Bay, only one back-to-back road is nice. But man, does it get tough. Like at Jets, Detroit, at Dallas in a little 3-game stretch, and then they get a couple more in a bye, and then it's Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore. Like those are some stretches that will really put a team to the test, especially right before the playoffs start. Like Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, 3 of the 4 last weeks of the season that's going to get you ready for the playoffs one way or another. I obviously, as Vegas shows, the over is pretty promising. That's what they're expecting. I do have them going over. I have them 11-6 going over the 9.5.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty confident in this team. I have them sitting at 13-4, and I don't have them losing a division game. So
wow.
The team's going to have to stay healthy. But I have a lot of confidence that CJ Stroud is going to make improvements in year 2. I don't think we're going to see one of those scenarios where they had a solid rookie season and then you see the sophomore slump. I don't think that's going to happen with CJ Stroud. He's got more weapons around him, and D'Amico Ryans is going to be in year 2 of implementing that defense. I think the Houston Texans are going to be one of the better teams in the AFC. So this will be a really fun team to watch. Rounding things out here, taking a look at some betting picks here. Starting with Tennessee Titans, we've got 4,500 plus yards passing for Will Levis, 1,250 plus receiving yards for Nuke, making the playoffs at plus 340. More than 5 rushing touchdowns for Will Levis, and worst regular season win total at plus 1,200.
Wow, that's what did I have? I only had him at 2 wins. I mean, I think I got to go with that. I only had him with 2 wins, so I'm going to take the win. And I think the team is way better than this. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's a good team, but I'll go with worst regular season win total.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to look at the rest of I would struggle to do that one because I think the Patriots are probably going to end up with a worse record. But
I think in our prediction, I think in that one, I think I had New England at 2 wins also. But
okay. All right. Looking at the Colts here, we've got most regular season rushing yards for Jonathan Taylor at plus 750, most regular season rushing touchdowns for Jonathan Taylor at plus 1,300, NFL Comeback Player of the Year AR at plus 700, 1,250 plus regular season receiving yards for Michael Pittman at plus 370, and Defensive Rookie of the Year Latu at plus 430. I had the AD Mitchell most receiving yards on here, but it looks like I removed it.
That Comeback Player of the Year is always such a joke. I don't even understand that award, but I think I'm going to go.
Didn't Joe Flacco win it last year and he only played like 3 games?
Yeah, over the guy that died. That's I think we'll go. Oh God, I think we'll go 1,250 plus receiving yards with Michael Pittman. Even though I'm not sure about that one though, because I do like AD Mitchell, but we'll go with that one.
Okay. All right, looking at Jacksonville here, we've got most regular season rookie receiving yards, Brian Thomas Jr. at plus 1,200. Travis Etienne, regular season total rushing touchdowns, 7.5 is plus and minus 104, plus 104, minus 134. 4,500 plus passing yards for Trevor Lawrence at plus 750. Make the playoffs plus 124. And then rounding out here, Josh Allen, 15 plus sacks in the regular season at plus 600.
It's not really for much money, but I'll take ETN over 7.5 rushing at plus 104.
Yep, I think that's the safest bet there. Looking at Houston to round things out here, most regular season passing yards, CJ Stroud plus 700. Most regular season rookie receiving yards, Jalen Polk plus 3,000. 4,500 plus regular season passing yards for CJ plus 280. 1,250 plus regular season receiving yards for Nico Collins, and AFC Championship plus 800.
I love Jalen Polk, but I don't think he's going to be leading and receiving. I think the safest one here is Stroud over 4,500.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up the AFC South. Next week, we are going to be covering the NFC South, and then we'll keep moving along from there. We have what is it, 3 weeks left. I mean, this is the last. I think we talked about this maybe at the top of the call. This is the last week without football because we have the Hall of Fame game on Thursday. So we've got 3 or 4 more divisions I think to cover, but we are rapidly approaching week 1. So check out our shows here. We should be releasing 2 this week since we missed last week. Also check out our NCAA show. We covered Big 12, and we're also going to be releasing the Group of 5. We've got some interesting conversation about Notre Dame if you're a college football fan. But that is it for us here. Jake, you got any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, just for everyone. So today is Saturday, July 27th, if you're listening today. So what's going to happen is there will be a drop each day, Saturday through Tuesday this week. There'll be one today, one tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We have 4 episodes coming out, 2 NFL, 2 college. One will drop each day.
There you go. And then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming starting next week. So yeah, we're excited to get the season started here and start picking some spreads and all that fun stuff. Please keep commenting, like, share, subscribe for us. We really appreciate it. We've definitely seen some listener growth so far this off season, and hopefully that continues as we move into the season here. So for fine citizen Jacob Workman, this is Reese Downing, TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL Edition, AFC South preview. We will see y'all next week.
See you, everyone.